Commanders fans, one thing has become crystal clear this offseason. The Washington Commanders are aggressively trying to improve this roster and build a team capable of getting back into playoff contention. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn know the pressure is rising entering 2026, especially after last season's disappointment, and everything this organization does right now revolves around one mission: putting Jaden Daniels in the best possible position to succeed. And today, Commanders fans, we may have another fascinating storyline developing that nobody should ignore. Could Stefon Diggs actually become the next major addition in Washington? Before we dive into this massive possibility, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss breaking Commanders news, rumors, and insider analysis throughout the offseason, because this story suddenly feels a lot more real than many people expected. Commanders fans, if you want the official Washington Commanders store, the link is in the description and in the comment. Tons of new gear available. This weekend, Diggs returned home to the DMV area through his Diggs Deep Foundation, hosting a charitable event focused on giving back to mothers ahead of Mother's Day. On the surface, it was simply another incredible example of Diggs staying connected to the community that helped shape him into the superstar he became. But for Commanders fans watching closely, something else stood out. The door suddenly feels open. And not just slightly open. For the first time in years, the idea of Stefon Diggs wearing burgundy and gold no longer feels impossible. That alone should get this fan base excited. Because let's be honest here, Washington still needs another proven receiver. Yes, Terry McLaurin remains the heartbeat of this offense and one of the NFL's most respected wideouts. Yes, Antonio Williams was a fantastic addition in the draft and could quickly become one of Jaden Daniels' favorite targets underneath. But after that, there are still major question marks. Treylon Burks remains inconsistent and injury-prone. Luke McCaffrey is still developing. Diami Brown has struggled to become a dependable weekly contributor. And while the Commanders continue monitoring Brandon Ayuk's situation in San Francisco, there's no guarantee that complicated situation ever leads to a deal. That's why the Diggs conversation is suddenly gaining momentum. Because unlike some of the other names floating around, Diggs checks several important boxes for Washington immediately. He's proven, he's explosive, he understands pressure.
And perhaps most importantly, he would instantly change how defenses prepare for Jaden Daniels. Think about what this offense could potentially look like. Terry McLaurin on one side, Stefon Diggs on the other, Antonio Williams working the slot, Jaden Daniels operating with confidence behind an improved offensive line. That suddenly becomes one of the most dangerous offensive groups in the NFC. And the timing of all this feels incredibly interesting. Washington is no longer viewed around the league as a dysfunctional franchise stuck in football purgatory. Under Josh Harris, Adam Peters, and Dan Quinn, the perception of this organization has started shifting dramatically. Players notice that. Veterans notice stability. They notice culture. They notice when a young quarterback looks special. And despite last season's injuries and frustrations, Jaden Daniels still looks like a player many around the NFL believe can become elite. That matters when recruiting free agents. For years, top players looked at Washington as a place to avoid. But now, the franchise is finally becoming attractive again. And Diggs himself practically acknowledged that possibility. When asked whether he has spoken with people around Washington, Diggs didn't shut the idea down at all. In fact, his comments probably added fuel to the fire. He admitted he's familiar with the city, familiar with the people, and said a potential fit makes sense, because it's home. Commanders fans immediately exploded online after hearing those comments. And honestly, it's easy to understand why. This isn't just any free agent receiver. This is one of the most accomplished wideouts of his generation. Even after spending last season with New England, Diggs still showed flashes of the elite route running and playmaking ability that made him one of the NFL's most feared receivers during his time in Buffalo and Minnesota. He may not be at the absolute peak of his powers anymore, but he doesn't need to be. Washington doesn't need Diggs to catch 140 passes. They need him to help elevate the offense. They need him to draw defensive attention away from McLaurin. They need him to become another reliable target for Daniels in high-pressure situations. And maybe most importantly, they need more leadership and professionalism in that receiver room. Diggs could provide all of that immediately. Now, of course, there are concerns. There always are with high-profile veterans.
Some fans will point to the sideline frustrations that occasionally followed Diggs during his time in Buffalo. Others will question whether his best football is already behind him. And financially, Washington would still need to be smart about structuring any potential deal. But here's the reality. Championship caliber teams take calculated risks. And if the Commanders truly believe Jaden Daniels is their franchise quarterback, then surrounding him with as much talent as possible should remain the top priority, especially after what happened last season. The injuries completely derailed Washington's momentum. Daniels missed significant time. The offense struggled for consistency. And too often, defenses focused entirely on McLaurin because there simply weren't enough proven weapons elsewhere. Adam Peters knows that cannot happen again. That's why Washington continues exploring every possible avenue to improve the receiver room. And while everyone keeps obsessing over Brandon Ayuk, the Diggs situation may quietly be becoming the more realistic path. Because unlike Ayuk, Diggs wouldn't require draft compensation. There's no trade drama, no complicated negotiations with another franchise, no waiting game involving post-June 1 cap situations. If both sides truly want this to happen, it could move quickly. And honestly, there's another layer to this story that makes it even more fascinating. The hometown factor. Fans absolutely love seeing local stars come home, especially in Washington. Imagine the energy inside Northwest Stadium if Diggs signed with the Commanders. Imagine the reaction across the DMV. Imagine Jaden Daniels suddenly throwing to two star-level receivers while Washington tries to climb back into playoff contention. That would completely change the national conversation around this franchise overnight. But while the Diggs rumors dominate headlines, Washington also quietly made another important move Monday by re-signing veteran cornerback Antonio Hamilton to a one-year deal. Now, this move may not generate massive excitement nationally, but inside the building, it matters. Hamilton gives the Commanders valuable veteran depth in the secondary, something this defense desperately needed after last year's struggles. He appeared in 15 games last season and brought professionalism, versatility, and special teams value to the roster. And honestly, that tells you a lot about how Adam Peters is building this team. Every move has purpose. Some additions are flashy, others are about stability and depth. Hamilton may not be a superstar, but teams trying to rebuild winning culture need players like him.
Especially in the locker room. That's why this offseason feels different for Washington. There's finally a real plan in place. The Commanders are balancing veteran leadership with young talent. They're building around Jaden Daniels while also strengthening the defense and culture simultaneously. Now the question becomes whether Diggs eventually becomes part of that vision. And if you ask many fans right now, the excitement is absolutely building. Because this isn't just about adding another player. This is about signaling to the league that Washington is serious about competing again. That they're serious about helping Jaden Daniels take the next step. And that they're serious about becoming a destination franchise once more. The next few weeks could become extremely interesting. If Diggs continues training and evaluating his options, don't be surprised if Washington remains firmly in the conversation. Especially if the Commanders believe one more proven weapon could elevate this offense from dangerous to truly explosive. And if that happens, the entire NFC East may suddenly need to take Washington a lot more seriously heading into 2026. The official NFL schedule release is set for May 14, but as always, pieces of information are beginning to leak out early from trusted league insiders and connected reporters around the country. And right now, one rumor in particular has Commanders fans paying very close attention. The possibility of Washington heading to London in Week 4. According to reports circulating from credible NFL insiders, including NBC Sports' J.P. Finley, there's growing belief that the Commanders could be playing overseas on October 4. That would place Washington in London during Week 4 of the regular season. And honestly, fans are already divided about it. Some absolutely love the idea. Others hate it. But regardless of where you stand, it would instantly become one of the biggest storylines of the Commanders' 2026 season. Think about it for a second. Jaden Daniels potentially leading the Commanders onto an international stage in one of the NFL's showcase global games. That's not something people would have realistically imagined just a couple of years ago. But now, Washington is finally becoming relevant again. The NFL clearly sees value in putting certain teams in front of international audiences, and the Commanders suddenly check several important boxes. A rising young quarterback, a historic franchise, an improving roster, a passionate fan base, and a team trying to climb back into playoff contention. The league notices those things.
Now, what makes this rumor even more fascinating is the timing and logistics surrounding it. Finley hinted that the Commanders could potentially remain overseas for more than 1 week. That's because there are separate reports suggesting the Jacksonville Jaguars may also play an international game in London later in October. That opens the door to several possibilities. Could Washington stay overseas for an extended stretch? Could the NFL build a mini international road trip into the schedule? Could the Commanders potentially gain an advantage by avoiding repeated international travel? At this point, nobody knows for sure. But this is exactly why schedule release week has become such a huge event across the NFL. Fans aren't just waiting for dates anymore. They're trying to predict the entire storyline of the season before it even starts. And for Washington, there are already several massive questions surrounding the schedule. How many primetime games will they receive? Will Jaden Daniels become a bigger national attraction? How brutal will the NFC East gauntlet be? And perhaps most importantly, how difficult will the opening stretch look for a team desperately trying to bounce back after a disappointing 2025 season? Because make no mistake, the pressure is real entering this year. Washington believes it improved this offseason. The front office attacked key weaknesses through the draft. Sonny Styles brought explosiveness and versatility to the defense. Antonio Williams added much-needed separation ability to the offense. Veteran additions strengthened depth across multiple positions. And internally, there's major confidence that a healthy Jaden Daniels can completely change the direction of this football team. But now, the NFL schedule could either help or hurt that mission significantly. Imagine opening the season against the Eagles or Rams immediately. Imagine a brutal early stretch loaded with playoff contenders before the offense fully gels. That's why fans are so obsessed with these leaks right now. Every clue matters. Every rumor feels important. And while most of the schedule remains unknown, we already know the Commanders are facing one of the more challenging slates in the NFL. The NFC East alone guarantees chaos. Washington still has to face the Eagles twice, the Cowboys twice, and a Giants team that many believe quietly improved this offseason. Then you add dangerous teams like the Rams, Seahawks, Bengals, Texans, and 49ers into the mix. Suddenly, there are very few easy games anywhere on this schedule. That's why getting off to a strong start feels critical, especially for Jaden Daniels. The young quarterback enters arguably the most important season of his career so far. After flashes of brilliance mixed with frustrating injuries last season, Daniels now carries enormous expectations entering year 3. And the organization knows it. Adam Peters has repeatedly emphasized building around him. Dan Quinn continues praising his leadership. Teammates have talked openly about his work ethic and off-season preparation. Now it becomes about translating all of that into wins. And the schedule could play a major role in determining whether Washington starts fast or spends the entire season fighting uphill. One thing fans should probably expect: more national attention. Even after last season's struggles, the Commanders remain one of the NFL's most fascinating storylines because of Daniels alone. Networks love dynamic quarterbacks, and when healthy, Daniels gives Washington highlight reel potential every single week. That likely means more primetime opportunities, more spotlight games, and potentially more pressure, especially if the London rumor becomes reality. Because international games are designed to showcase stars, and whether people want to admit it or not, the NFL views Jaden Daniels as one of the league's rising attractions. Now, another fascinating layer to this entire process is the misinformation battle happening online. Every year, fake schedules flood social media. Random accounts claim to have inside information. Fans get tricked by edited graphics and fabricated leaks. That's why tracking only credible reports matters so much during this week. And right now, the London rumor remains the only major Commanders leak gaining serious traction from trusted reporters. Everything else remains speculation. Still, that hasn't stopped fans from trying to predict the full roadmap. Some believe Washington could receive an early NFC East showdown to immediately test the team. Others think the NFL may want to showcase Daniels against elite quarterbacks in standalone primetime games. And honestly, there's logic behind all of it. Because this Commanders team suddenly feels relevant again. For the first time in years, people around the league are genuinely curious about where this franchise is heading. Can Daniels stay healthy? Will the revamped defense improve? Can Antonio Williams become an immediate contributor? Will Washington finally stabilize the offensive line? And could another veteran receiver still be added before training camp? All those storylines make the Commanders one of the NFL's more intriguing teams entering 2026. That's why this schedule release matters more than usual.